Karen thought she owned the world on her roaring Harley, but the world was about to bite back. One kick was all it took to unravel her life. The summer sun beat down on Willow Creek Park, a sleepy green patch in a small Virginia town where families picnicked and kids chased frisbees. Karen Miller, a 38-year-old biker with a chip on her shoulder and a leather jacket studded with pins, revved her motorcycle through the park's edge, ignoring the signs banning vehicles. Her bike's growl drowned out the laughter, drawing glares she didn't care to notice. Karen wasn't here to make friends she never was. Her life was a middle finger to rules, to softness, to anyone who didn't fit her narrow view of normal. And today her sights were set on a new target. Near the park's central fountain, Daniel Carter, a 42-year-old blind man, walked with measured steps, his guide dog, Rusty, a golden retriever, leading the way. Daniel's cane tapped lightly, his face calm but focused, tuned to Rusty's every movement. The dog's harness was worn but pristine, a lifeline for Daniel, who'd lost his sight in a car accident a decade ago. Rusty wasn't just a pet, was Daniel's eyes, his independence, his quiet protector. Passers-by smiled at the pair, some offering nods Daniel couldn't see but felt in their warmth. Karen, however, saw something else. To her, Daniel was a nuisance, his slow pace clogging the path she wanted to tear through. And Rusty, just a mutt in her way. She'd always hated dogs too needy, too weak. But it was more than that. Daniel's dark skin, his deliberate movements, his very existence in her space sparked something ugly in her. She didn't question it. She never did. Prejudice was her compass, and she followed it blindly. She pulled her bike to a stop, the engine idling like a predator's growl. "Hey, move it!" she barked, her voice cutting through the park's hum. Daniel paused, tilting his head, unsure if she meant him. Rusty's ears flicked, but he stayed steady, guiding Daniel forward. Karen's temper flared. She wasn't used to being ignored. Kicking her bike's stand down, she dismounted, her boots crunching gravel as she stormed toward them. "Yo, blind guy, get your dog out of my way," she shouted, close enough for Daniel to feel her breath. He froze, gripping his cane tighter. "I'm just walking here, ma'am," he said, his voice even but firm. "The path's wide enough for everyone." Karen scoffed, her eyes narrowing at Rusty, who stood protectively by Daniel's side. "Stupid mutt," she muttered, and before anyone could react, she swung her boot, catching Rusty hard in the ribs. The dog yelped, stumbling, his harness snapping loose and clattering to the ground. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A mother pulled her child close. An elderly man shouted, "What's wrong with you?" Daniel's face twisted in horror, his hands reaching for Rusty, who whimpered but returned to his side, limping. "Why would you do that?" Daniel's voice cracked, raw with pain. Karen smirked, unapologetic. "Keep your dog in line, or I'll do worse," she spat, turning back to her bike. The park's air grew thick, the crowd's murmurs swelling into outrage. A teenage girl, Mia, who'd been filming skate tricks nearby, caught the whole thing on her phone. Her hands shook as she uploaded the clip to X, the caption simple: "This woman just kicked a blind man's guide dog. Willow Creek Park. Disgusting." Within minutes, the post spread, comments flooding in, each one angrier than the last. Karen, oblivious, revved her bike, ready to peel out and leave the chaos behind. But chaos has a way of catching up. Daniel knelt beside Rusty, his fingers tracing the dog's trembling frame, checking for injury. "You're okay, boy," he whispered, though his voice wavered. Rusty nuzzled his hand, loyal despite the pain. The crowd closed in, some offering help, others hurling insults at Karen. who flipped them off as she mounted her bike. "Bunch of snowflakes," she muttered, gunning the engine. But Mia's video was already pinging across X, racking up thousands of views. People weren't just angry, they were mobilizing. By noon, the park incident was trending locally. Karen's face, sneering as she kicked Rusty, was unmistakable. Someone recognized her bike, a custom Harley with a skull decal, and posted her name, dredged from a local biker group's page. Karen Miller, self-proclaimed road queen, was no stranger to trouble. She'd been banned from 2 bars for starting fights, always over something petty: a wrong look, a foreign accent, or just someone existing in a way she didn't like. Her ex-profile, filled with rants about outsiders ruining her town, didn't help her case. At the park, Daniel's calm began to crack. He wasn't one for confrontation, but Rusty was his world. The dog had been trained not just to guide but to protect, a skill Daniel rarely needed until now. Rusty, despite his limp, stayed alert, his eyes locked on Karen's retreating figure. Daniel stood, his voice rising. "You think you can hurt him and walk away? You don't know what he means to me." The crowd parted as he stepped forward, Rusty at his side, the broken harness dangling like a badge of their bond. Karen laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Cry about it, old man. It's just a dog." She didn't see Mia's phone still recording, capturing every word. She didn't notice the park ranger approaching, alerted by a bystander's call. And she definitely didn't know that Rusty wasn't just any dog. Beyond guiding Daniel, Rusty had been trained by a veterans program for crisis response, taught to sense threats and act if his handler was in danger. Karen's kick had flipped a switch in the dog's instincts, and he was watching her every move. The ranger, a no-nonsense woman named Clara, pushed through the crowd. "Ma'am, step away from the bike," she ordered. Karen rolled her eyes. "What? You gonna arrest me for kicking a mutt?" Clara's jaw tightened. "Animal cruelty's a crime, and you just did it in front of 50 witnesses. Get off the bike. Now." Karen's smirk faded as she noticed the crowd's phones, all pointed at her. Mia's video had already hit 10,000 views, with comments calling for her arrest, her job, her everything. Karen's defiance wavered, but she doubled down. "This is my park. I pay taxes. You people don't belong here." The words were a match to gasoline. The crowd erupted, shouting her down. A man in a baseball cap yelled, "You're the one who doesn't belong." Daniel, still holding Rusty's leash, spoke softly but with steel. "You don't get to decide who belongs. Not here, not anywhere." His words cut deeper than the crowd's jeers, and for a moment, Karen's bravado flickered. But she wasn't done. She revved her bike again, ready to bolt. That's when Rusty moved. With a low growl, the dog lunged, not to attack but to block, standing firm in front of the bike's front wheel. Karen froze, her hands trembling on the handlebars. Rusty's training kicked in. He wasn't just protecting Daniel. He was de-escalating, holding the line. The crowd held its breath, and Clara stepped closer, her hand on her radio, calling for backup. Karen's world was unraveling, and she didn't even know the half of it. Mia's video had reached a local news outlet, and a reporter was already en route. By evening, Karen's name was plastered across X. Her employer, a local auto shop, tagged in dozens of posts demanding her firing. The shop's owner, a gruff but fair man named Tom, saw the video and felt his stomach drop. Karen had been a decent mechanic but a constant headache, her rants alienating customers. This was the final straw. Back at the park, Karen's bravado crumbled as Clara handcuffed her, citing animal cruelty and public disturbance. The crowd cheered, but Daniel didn't. He knelt by Rusty, stroking his fur, whispering, "Good boy." Rusty's tail wagged faintly, his job done. The broken harness lay in the dirt, a casualty of Karen's cruelty. But Daniel's resolve was unbroken. He'd spent years rebuilding his life after the accident, learning to navigate a world that often overlooked him. He wasn't about to let Karen's hatred take that away. As Clara led Karen to the ranger's truck, the biker's eyes darted to the crowd, searching for sympathy but finding none. Her bike, her pride and joy, sat abandoned by the path, a relic of her reckless ego. Mia's video hit 50,000 views, and the comments were merciless. Karma's coming for her. That dog's a hero. She messed with the wrong man. And they were right. Karen had no idea what Rusty was trained to do, but she was about to find out what justice felt like. By dusk, the story had spread beyond Willow Creek. The news van arrived, and a reporter approached Daniel, who was sitting on a bench, Rusty at his feet. "Sir, can you tell us what happened?" the reporter asked. Daniel's voice was steady, but his words carried weight. "That woman didn't just hurt my dog. She tried to take away my freedom. But Rusty's stronger than her hate, and so am I." The crowd, still lingering, clapped softly, their anger giving way to admiration. Karen, now in the back of a police car, saw her phone blowing up with notifications. Her boss had texted, "You're done. Don't come back." Her biker group's chat was worse. Kicked out, called out, shunned. The ex-posts were relentless, digging up every ugly comment she'd ever made online. Her world, built on bravado and bias, was collapsing under the weight of her own actions. And Rusty? He was more than a guide dog. His training had saved Daniel from worse threats than Karen. And today, he'd saved the day again. Not with teeth, but with courage. Daniel stood, Rusty's leash in one hand, his cane in the other. The crowd parted as he walked away, the sun setting behind him. He didn't need their pity or their cheers. He had Rusty, and that was enough. For Karen, though, the sun was setting on something else: her illusions of power, her unchecked cruelty, her place in a world that was finally saying, enough. The police cars' red and blue lights cast jagged shadows across Willow Creek Park as Karen sat in the back seat, her wrists chafed by the cuffs. Her phone, now in Clara's possession, vibrated relentlessly with notifications, each one a nail in the coffin of her old life. She stared out the window, her sneer replaced by a hollow glare, as the reality of her actions sank in. The crowd's faces, a mix of disgust and triumph, blurred into a single accusation. She'd gone too far, but Karen's mind still scrambled for excuses, clinging to the warped logic that had fueled her rage. She didn't see herself as the villain yet. Daniel, meanwhile, sat quietly on the park bench, Rusty's head resting in his lap. The golden retriever's breathing had steadied, though his limp was a reminder of the cruelty he'd endured. A volunteer from the local animal shelter, alerted by Mia's video, arrived with a temporary harness, offering to take Rusty for a vet check. Daniel nodded, his fingers lingering on Rusty's fur. "He's tough," he said softly, "but he shouldn't have to be." The volunteer, a young woman named Sarah, knelt beside them, her eyes brimming with tears. "We'll take care of him, Mr. Carter. And you." Daniel offered a faint smile, grateful but weary. The news crew set up nearby, their camera trained on the scene. The reporter, a sharp-eyed woman named Lisa, approached Daniel with a microphone. "Mr. Carter, your story's going viral. People are calling you and Rusty heroes. How do you feel about what happened?" Daniel's shoulders tensed. He wasn't one for the spotlight. Years of navigating blindness had taught him to keep his world small, manageable. But he knew this moment wasn't just about him. "I'm not a hero," he said, his voice low but clear. "Rusty's the one who stood his ground." That woman, she didn't just hurt him. She tried to take away what keeps me whole. I hope she learns something from this. Lisa's camera operator panned to Rusty, capturing the dog's steady gaze. Then to the broken harness still lying in the dirt. The image would later become iconic, shared across X with captions like, "A dog's loyalty versus human hate," and "Justice for Rusty." But for Daniel, it was just another day of surviving a world that sometimes felt rigged against him. He'd faced prejudice before, not always as blatant as Karen's, but no less cutting. Microaggressions in stores, whispers on buses, assumptions about his place. Each one chipped away at him, but Rusty had always been his shield, his reason to keep going. Back at the police station, Karen's bravado was crumbling under the weight of consequences. Clara booked her on charges of animal cruelty, public disturbance, and, after a quick review of Mia's video, a hate crime enhancement due to her racial slurs caught on tape. Karen's jaw dropped at that last one. "Hate crime? Are you kidding me?" she snapped. Clara didn't flinch. "You targeted him because of who he is. The law's clear, Ms. Miller." Karen slumped in her chair, the fight draining out of her. For the first time, she wondered if she'd misread the world she thought she ruled. By nightfall, Mia's video had hit 200,000 views, and the X posts were a storm of outrage and support. A crowdfunding page for Rusty's vet bills, set up by Sarah from the shelter, raised $5,000 in hours. Local businesses offered free services to Daniel, meals, rides, even a new harness for Rusty. But the backlash against Karen was fiercer. Her auto shop's X page was flooded with one-star reviews, despite Tom's public statement firing her. "We don't condone Karen Miller's actions," he posted. "She no longer works here." It wasn't enough for the internet. Calls for boycotts grew, and Tom faced a grim choice: rebuild trust or lose everything. Karen's biker crew, once her loudest cheerleaders, turned on her too. Their group chat, usually a mix of crude jokes and ride plans, was now a tribunal. "You kicked a blind guy's dog? What's wrong with you?" one member typed. Another, a grizzled vet named Hank, was blunter. "You're out. Don't show your face at the clubhouse." Karen's phone, returned to her after booking, buzzed with their betrayal. She scrolled through the messages, her chest tight. These were her people, her tribe. Losing them hurt more than the cuffs. The next morning, Willow Creek buzzed with the story. A local cafe hung a sign, "Rusty's Welcome Here," with a paw print logo. Kids drew chalk art of dogs on the park's paths, and a vigil for Daniel and Rusty was planned for the weekend. But not everyone was on board. A small but vocal group on X defended Karen, claiming she was provoked or that Daniel shouldn't have been in her way. Their posts, laced with dog whistles and outright slurs, were quickly drowned out, but not before Daniel's supporters screenshotted them, exposing the undercurrent of bias still festering in the town. Daniel, now back at his modest apartment, listened to the news on his radio. Rusty, cleared by the vet with only bruises, slept at his feet. Sarah had dropped off the new harness, paid for by the crowd fund, and Daniel felt its sturdy straps, a small comfort. But the weight of the day lingered. He'd never wanted to be a symbol, yet here he was, his pain laid bare for the world. A friend, Jamal, stopped by with takeout, sensing Daniel's mood. "You okay, man?" Jamal asked, cracking open a soda. Daniel sighed. "I just wanted to walk my dog. Now it's all this." Jamal nodded, scrolling through X on his phone. "People are with you, though. Look at this, folks are organizing a march against hate crimes. They're calling it Rusty's Run." Daniel chuckled, the first time he'd laughed all day. Rusty'd love that, long as there's treats. But his smile faded. "I keep thinking about her. That woman. Why's she so angry? What makes someone like that?" Jamal shrugged. Some people build their whole world on hating what's different. Hurts less than fixing themselves. At the county jail, Karen faced her first night in a cell. The concrete walls closed in, amplifying her thoughts. She'd always seen herself as tough, untouchably a rebel against a world gone soft. But now, alone, she couldn't dodge the truth. Her job was gone, her friends had bailed, and her name was poison. The ex-posts, which she checked obsessively on her phone's limited data, were brutal. Karen Miller's a racist bully. Hope she rots. That dog deserves better than her. Each one stung, but she couldn't look away. A guard, noticing her agitation, tossed her a warning. Better get used to it, Miller. You're famous now. Karen glared but said nothing. Fame wasn't supposed to feel like this. She thought of Daniel, his calm voice, his dog's loyalty. Something in her stirred not regret, not yet, but a crack in her armor. She'd always told herself she was fighting for her America, but what had that gotten her? A cell, a shattered reputation, and a town that wanted her gone. By week's end, Rusty's Run drew hundreds to Willow Creek Park. Daniel attended reluctantly, urged by Jamal and Sarah. Families, activists, and even bikers from rival crews showed up, many wearing shirts with Rusty's face. Mia, now a local celebrity for her video, led a chant, "No hate, no fear, Rusty's heroes are here." Daniel, with Rusty by his side, spoke briefly, his voice amplified by a megaphone. "This isn't about me or Rusty. It's about what we stand for. Nobody should be hurt for who they are." The crowd roared, and Rusty barked, stealing the show. Karen's trial date was set, but the court of public opinion had already ruled. Her lawyer, a harried public defender, warned her to plead guilty. "The evidence is overwhelming, Karen. Video, witnesses, your own words online. Take a deal or it's worse." Karen nodded, numb. The hate crime charge carried real time, and her ex-rants, now exhibits in the case, painted her as unrepentant. She thought of apologizing, but the words felt foreign, like a language she'd never learned. The crowdfund for Rusty grew to $20,000, with donations funding not just his care but a local program for guide dogs. Daniel, overwhelmed, donated half to the veterans group that trained Rusty, hoping others could find the freedom he had. The broken harness, recovered from the park, was framed at the shelter, a reminder of resilience. Lisa, the reporter, aired a follow-up, interviewing Daniel and Mia. "This town's waking up," Mia said. "We're not perfect, but we're trying." Daniel added, "Hate's loud, but love's louder. Rusty taught me that." Karen's sentencing came a month later. The courtroom was packed, with Daniel in the front row, Rusty at his feet. Karen, in an orange jumpsuit, kept her eyes down as the judge read her fate. 18 months for animal cruelty and the hate crime, plus restitution to Daniel. Her X account, now suspended, was cited as evidence of her pattern of bias. As she was led away, she glanced at Daniel, their eyes meeting for the first time since the park. He didn't glare or gloat, just looked, steady and unshaken. It was worse than any curse she could have imagined. Willow Creek changed after that day. The park's paths were widened, with new signs banning vehicles and promoting accessibility. A mural of Rusty, painted by local kids, adorned the community center. Daniel kept walking, Rusty's new harness gleaming, though he stayed off X, wary of the noise. Karen, in her cell, had time to think, too much time. She'd lost everything, not because of Daniel or Rusty, but because of the hate she'd let define her. Maybe, in the quiet, she'd find a way to unlearn it. Or maybe not. That was her burden now. The story of Rusty and Daniel spread far beyond Virginia, a spark for conversations about prejudice, justice, and redemption. It wasn't just about a dog or a kick, it was about what we choose to stand for when hate rears its head. What do you think? Where does justice begin? And how do we heal a community divided?